Are the Vikings going to pay Justin Jefferson? And it's holdout season. We're going to centralize around the Cowboys. Oh, goody.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in Locked On NFL Thursday. Alex Clancy here, and that is not Tyler Rowland. That is Michelle Majuk, another member of the Locked On clan. Thanks for making Locked On NFL your first listen free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's going to be a fun show. Justin Jefferson, the drama or the inferred drama is rising. There's a whole bunch of players who haven't been to voluntary minicamp yet, voluntary OTAs. Does that mean anything? We're going to centralize around the Cowboys because that's always fun. And then I want to get Michelle's thoughts on something that Tyler and I have discussed a lot on this show surrounding the wide receivers. We'll talk about that in the third segment. This episode of Locked On NFL Thursday is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your purchase. First purchase, terms apply. Michelle, Justin Jefferson was seen in the arena surrounding Jets minicamp, Jets OTAs, Jets facility. It just begs the question bigger. What the hell is Minnesota going to do with Justin Jefferson and a rookie QB?
I know though the rumors are swirling right? Like maybe Justin Jefferson gets traded, but that would make zero sense to me in terms of the Vikings, what they have going on. Also, like the Justin Jefferson side, I don't get why he would want to do that to have 1 year with a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles, and then who knows what the Jets are going to do after that. They've been a disaster for so long. But on the Viking side, you just brought in rookie quarterback JJ McCarthy. Don't you want him to grow with Justin Jefferson? Also, Jefferson's the best wide receiver we have seen in a couple decades now. Get him under contract. They waited too long. They should have just paid him last year. Would have saved a lot of money, actually. Probably would have got him under contract easily for $30 million per year. Now he's asking for more than that, as he should, because these guys are getting crazy contracts. But what are you doing, Vikings? Get your stuff together.
Well, the whole offseason for me is nothing they've done has made sense to entice Justin Jefferson to be happier. So say what you want about Kirk Cousins, okay? There's a lot of quarterbacks that are well above average that are never going to be that Super Bowl level quarterback. Kirk Cousins is maybe the best of that pack. I mean, numbers-wise, their offense was flourishing for the most part around him, save, primetime games. But how are you looking as Justin Jefferson at that quarterback room now with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold, oh, this is better. I'm happier now. Or you just take the money and then just say, you know what? Whoever pays me this, if I get traded in a couple years, it'll be a different team. How in the mindset of him is this is better. I'm happy about this.
He did mention, I don't know if it was last offseason or the season before that, he wanted to play as long as possible with Kirk Cousins. He was I don't ever want to play with anybody but Kirk Cousins, which is a weird quarterback to glue yourself to. But at the same time, he's been feeding him to these historical numbers year after year after year. So you get why he likes him so much. But I also understand the Vikings moving on from Kirk Cousins. The Falcons paid, right? The Falcons paid. The Vikings have been paying him a ton. They're probably just at this point, Kevin O'Connell feels pretty good about his offense. He can stick in a quarterback that's a JJ who's a little bit safer on the safer end. Maybe doesn't have the highest upside, but I can imagine he's not going to put up Kirk Cousins numbers in his rookie season, but I think he can get there in the next few seasons. So I understand the movement there, but I also understand why Jefferson would be a bit worried to play with a rookie quarterback who also doesn't have very much experience, even at the college level, of throwing the ball too often.
Yeah. I'm not seeing, the Michigan offense making Justin Jefferson very happy. It's there's a couple things that we know to be true. One, there's no real direct correlative between wide receiver one standout and winning Super Bowls. There are throughout, the entirety of time, but more times than not, giving a wide receiver $30+ million doesn't equate to winning. That's quarterback money. So you take quarterback, you take that money, there's less money you can pay other players who are talented to make your roster better. Now, with that, you bring in JJ McCarthy, who's going to make $11, for the next 4 years, which is going to help the cap. But it's like, is this offense with a rookie quarterback, and Sam Darnold may start the first couple of weeks, we don't really know at this point, is that offense with TJ Hawkinson coming off an injury and Jordan Addison having a good rookie year and, and Justin Jefferson, like, will that offense be good enough to give him $40+ million and make it worth it? I mean, I think so, but I mean, it's a question that needs to be asked, right?
I think it's 100% worth it. They're not paying anybody. They have to pay. Like, if you want good players, you got to pay up for them, right? Like the Vikings, who are they paying? Even like Danielle Hunter, they were paying, but they let him go this offseason because they didn't want to pay up for him. There's really no stars on the team that they're having to pay. We'll see what Jordan Addison does over his next few years, but they don't have to worry about that for a while. You mentioned they don't have to worry about the quarterback situation, paying him for a while. So, like, this is the time, if ever you're going to pay the best wide receiver in the league this amount of money, like, they can handle it. Like, figure it out. I don't understand what's taking so long. But even if they decided for whatever reason they want to trade him, right, what would it cost? Like, if the Jets wanted to trade for Justin Jefferson, how many first rounders does it take to get a guy like that? Because I think it's at least 2 first rounders at the minimum you start with.
And Garrett Wilson. Like, it's not like, that's, you have to get the best receiver from the other team, which obviously that's what makes this kind of, farcical. But it's like, this is this time of year. The NFL is unpredictable. Okay. The predictability of it is usually players like Justin Jefferson stay with one team for a long time. At least that's what history has shown. But when the money is this high, it's in the nosebleeds. And that just makes the stakes even higher. And a dude who's been injured a couple times in the NFL, like, it's not like he's played every single game. He did average over 100 yards per game that he played last year. But it's like, Michelle, $40 million for a non-quarterback? It's just like, that's the thing that when you get, so say he gets that, which he should. He's been the best receiver in football. I get it. Can we finally get to the point where the next receiver to get paid doesn't make more than that? Like, when are we going to live in that world where it's, I'm the next one up, I'm going to be the highest paid guy? No, he's the best receiver in football. He gets that. And then, like, T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, who we'll discuss later in the show, like, there's no way they're getting more money than him.
I know that we always see guys keep breaking the contracts, but I do think these players have to understand what Justin Jefferson has done compared to themselves. Now, maybe CeeDee Lamb, who put up 1,700 yards last year, maybe he's like, no, I want Justin Jefferson money. You can see that. But still, Jefferson should be the highest paid. I don't know if he gets 40. Like, I think 35 should get it done. We'll see what he's asking for, what he needs. But what he's done is absolutely insane. He has 29 games with 100+ receiving yards. That's the second most in NFL history among players in their first 5 career seasons. He has played 4 seasons. He's played 4. And he already has the second most through a player's first 5 seasons, only behind Randy Moss. He's 1 game behind Randy Moss in a player's first 5 seasons. So he has a whole nother year to keep building up on that. Absolutely insane. He's a freak. He's so good. Pay the guy his $35 million a year, and I'm fine with that. Like, I wouldn't sweat about it whatsoever.
For those that don't know, Michelle Majuk is a researcher by trade. I'm sure you research a lot of negative stats for people, and you see how excited you are. It's like, look at what this dude's doing. I work with numbers all day long. Listen to me. Listen to her. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Michelle Majuk does a fantasy show here on Locked On, as well as a myriad other things. Thanks for making Locked On NFL your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jerry Jones, Under a Microscope. Next. This episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investments and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. More than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor, you're looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you the tools and data you need all in one place. They are the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news, including breaking news, original editorial perspective, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis with the best brand out there, yahoofinance.com. Go there. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Yeah, Justin Jefferson. Listen, this is why we love what we do every day. You get to talk about something where chances are this is going to happen, where he'll be wearing number 18 in that god-awful purple for a while. And then you can have the conversation like, what if that's not the case? And that's what makes all of this so fun. Everydayers, thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Michelle Majuk filling in for Tyler Rowland, who is taking a much-needed vacation. He'll be with me back next week at Clancy's Corner _ Locked On Cardinals news. So this is holdout season. Some of it is inferred. Some of it is people not going to voluntary OTAs. But with the Dallas Cowboys specifically, it is very real. Jerry Jones lives off being relevant. So being relevant when, starting over, hitting the reset button, which he could have done multiple times, since he's been owner since the 80s. He doesn't do it. He pays the guys he drafts because he's the smartest guy in the room. He pays those guys, and then the rest of the roster falters. Michelle, as I mentioned last segment, you work with numbers. There are some of the biggest names on the roster right now who have not gotten that second contract, namely CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. Explain to me what it looks like for the roster if they both get paid, or what it would look like if for some reason they can't pay them both, which I would, be shocked if they didn't.
Well, this is the thing. They keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And the quarterback market is exploding with Jared Goff even getting paid over $50 million a year. But now there's 5 quarterbacks getting paid $50 million a year or more. Like, that's what Dak's going to be asking for. CeeDee Lamb, now because you waited, wide receivers are he's going to be asking for at least $30 million a year, probably upwards of closer to $33 million a year. Like, you waited too long, and I don't know what the Cowboys are doing. They lost a bunch of important people this offseason because they didn't pay him, and the leaders of Tyron Smith and Tyler Biotish and Stephon Gilmore, Tony Pollard, whatever. But then you also not only have Prescott and Lamb and expiring contracts next year, but also Zach Martin. You're one of the best, maybe the best guard in the NFL that's been with you forever. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's getting older, but then also 2 years left for Micah Parsons, Deron Bland, Jake Ferguson, Tyler Smith. Like, all of these contracts are coming due, and they're not doing anything. Like, move, do something. What is happening? They're just like sitting there, just chilling.
Yeah. I mean, in compounding that, he said that they were going to be making massive moves this offseason before the offseason started. And you're just looking at what they're doing. And it's because here's the thing, like, again, from just a football fan standpoint, they've got, popcorn watching players. And it's the Cowboys. So that you're going to get the notoriety. That you're going to get the, endorsement deals. You're on America's team, which is kind of a joke to me. But, if you're Jerry Jones and you see Dak, CeeDee, and Micah Parsons, who has the potential to be the best defensive player in the league, especially after his rookie year where we were seeing him do things from his position that just isn't normal. You pay all 3 and you figure it out with the rest. You hope that some guys will stay for a fraction or close to a fraction of the price just to play with the Cowboys and buy in. Like, we talked about Kirk Cousins in the first segment about how he's that group of guys that is a very, very good quarterback who is very expensive. Dak Prescott is number 2 on that list. So, like, roster building, research background. What the hell, like, logistically speaking, what would you do if you were Jerry Jones?
You gotta pay Prescott and Lamb. I mean, they're your entire offense. Now, that's going to take up at least $80 million per year, right? Probably more than that. And then also then the offensive line becomes such a big issue because Zach Martin wants a new contract and deserves so. And guards all of a sudden are making a ton of money when Robert Hunt gets $20 million a year. I'm pretty sure that was like Zach Martin being like, no, like, I'm going to make more. I don't know if you can then pay Parsons his more than $30 million a year, Prescott 50, Lamb 30, Martin 20 plus. Like, that's taken up pretty much your whole thing. So I'm focusing on Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, trying to fix the offensive line any way I can over the next couple of off seasons because Tyler Smith is coming up too. You're not going to be able to afford to pay him. So yeah, the offensive line might not be pretty for a while, but Prescott and Lamb have to be the 2 you're focusing on, with obviously also figuring out a way to pay Parsons as well, and then staying cheaper on the other positions on defense.
Any of those 3 guys would go for 2 first-round picks. Like, if they wanted, like, if I say this a lot with Michael Bidwell and the Cardinals, like, if they wanted to, they would. And Michael Bidwell has. He's changed his ways. He got actual people who knew what the hell they were doing in the GM and head coaching roles. Jerry Jones, if he wanted to, it would be ugly. It would be a Band-Aid ripped off. You trade CeeDee Lamb or you trade Micah Parsons, you get 2 first-round picks, and you have money to spend. But I think that they're too far gone. It's too much. And now they just have to draft offensive line and defensive line for the next 3 drafts. But like, Micah Parsons is so good at football. CeeDee Lamb has had 1 year where it's like, that's what we've been waiting for. So is that enough to give him $30 million a year? Like, that's, for me, it's like, this isn't baseball where you pay it backwards. It's like, oh, you played great for 4 years? Here's $200 million. You're definitely going to regress, but we're paying you for making $11 the first 4 years. This is football. I mean, it happens like existentially. You're getting paid for how you're producing that year. So, like, do you see a world where they don't, where they trade one, where they say, sorry, go find money elsewhere?
I think they put themselves into such a bad situation this offseason heading into the draft, right? Like, this is one of the best drafts for wide receivers we're going to ever see, right? So incredibly, just so much depth there, but they couldn't even focus on that because they left themselves so many big holes. So they had to take the tackle in the first round, and then they just didn't even focus on adding these other weapons, right? So it's really CeeDee Lamb and who else? I mean, Brandon Cooks, I missing the name here. Herbert. No, not Herbert. Herbert?
For
the Cowboys, the third.
Michael
Jalen
Gallup?
Herbert. Jalen Tolbert.
Jalen
Tolbert. All right, I got there.
Yeah.
Jalen Tolbert. Like, those are your guys, and you put yourself in that position, so they can't afford to lose CeeDee Lamb at all. I guess that's not really a reason to pay someone, but I do think he's worth the $30 million as well. This offense has been incredible in the regular season, right? Mm-hmm. Over and over and over again, they just are ranking first in the NFL over the last 4 years with Dak Prescott as a starter. The offense is fine. They need to be more consistent in the playoffs, right? They keep falling apart in the playoffs on both sides of the ball, but you also can't let a guy like Parsons go. So they're screwed. They have to pay these 3 guys.
There it is.
Not the rest.
Hashtag analysis. They're screwed.
They waited too long.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy part about last year, and we're going to pivot. That's a hell of a transition into the final segment regarding CeeDee Lamb and getting a whole bunch of money from the Cowboys who drafted him. They needed a player like Zeke last year. Like, they're a dome regular season team. And I'm a huge proponent of teams that can play any style in any weather. Doesn't matter. You lean on the run, you lean on the pass. I mean, it's like, when the Patriots beat the Bills in Orchard Park when Mac Jones threw 3 passes. It's like, if they're the great teams are the ones who can win anyway. If CeeDee Lamb's not catching 10 balls for 150, they struggled last year. They don't have anybody that could run between the tackles. I mean, Tony Pollard's just not that guy. So what they need to do is, like, he should have hard reset. Well, first of all, yeah, he should have hard reset a couple years ago. But now that he hasn't, hashtag analysis, they're screwed and they got to figure it out on the fly. Now,
yeah, they really were so different last year between home and away. Like, yeah. They need to figure that out as well. Need to figure out how to win a playoff game once in a while here and there, But maybe they just blow it all up, like you said. Go get your 6 first-round picks and start from fresh with those. Start all over.
Ain't no way Jerry Jones is going to do that, even though he probably should have a couple times at this point. Alex Clancy, Michelle Majuk. Wide receivers under a microscope in a different way. Next, Locked On NFL Thursday. This episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by the Game Time app. Now, I don't know if Michelle is a fan of this. We haven't talked about this, but I'm a huge fan of the band Green Day. Grew up. It was the first CD that I bought with my own money. It was Dookie, and they're coming to Chase Field in Phoenix in September. And I ran right to the Game Time app to see, where the prices were, where the stage was, because I didn't know. I'd never been to a baseball stadium before to see a game, and now I know. It's a beautiful thing. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Like, the craziest part about the Game Time app in general is they've got, once you click on the tickets you might want to buy, they show you the vantage point of what you'll be sitting and seeing before you buy the tickets. You don't have to guess. The NFL is right around the corner, man. Week 1, you want to go to the game? Whatever game it is in whatever city you're in, you can buy tickets on the Game Time app, and you can see what you'll be looking at from the seats before you buy them. It's an absolute game changer. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If when somebody who works at NFL research tells you the Cowboys screwed, like that's not like the world's going to end in 2 years. Get yourself in order. This is somebody who is looking at numbers all day, contracts, stats, everything in between, and saying, I don't see a positive way out of this. Like, Michelle, before we pivot, because I do want to ask you, and you're the perfect person to ask this, because Tyler and I have kind of alluded to it a couple times over the last couple of years, but I'm really interested in getting your thoughts on it. When you have that much, and he did this already, the Cowboys did this already with Leighton Vander Esch and DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, he paid both of them so much money, and it kind of crippled the defense. Now, he drafted well with Trevon Diggs, who had a good year, had a down year. Well, he got hurt last year. Brought in Stephon Gilmore. Like, let me ask you this very simply, and then we'll pivot. Do you think the Cowboys can win being as top-heavy as they are because they've been so successful at it for the majority of the time doing it that way over the last handful of years? Like, is this just a ball bouncing the wrong way, or is this a proven thing that ain't going to work even though it looks pretty for 80% of the season?
I cannot picture them winning a Super Bowl. No, not with this squad, not with Mike McCarthy as the head coach either. That's a big part of it, right? Like, regular season, all of these, you can win a lot of games being top heavy, but then you run into other teams that also have really good players on their teams and then also have more depth. And it clearly shows in the playoffs with the Cowboys losing year after year after year early in the playoffs. Like, yeah, you can be dominant against a lot of bad teams that you run across, especially in their own division against the Giants and the Commanders. Like, that's 4 easy games right there for you any given season. And then obviously some other sprinkled in easy games. But yeah, once you get to the playoffs, they're all good. They're all good. So it really starts to show your lack of depth once you get there.
For sure. Now let's pivot to the wide receiver room specifically. There's this thesis that I've been trying to build over the last 2 years. I can't really find the words, but I have the idea in place, and I want to get your thoughts on it. We're starting to see every year, and this year specifically, this is almost more of an outlier than part of the rule, but teams are now looking for that wide receiver like they look for a quarterback early in the draft, because they know after the rookie contract is up, it's going to be a very expensive contract. So you want to take advantage of those first 4 years, or 5 with a 5th-year option if it's first-round wide receiver. And then you get to the crossroads of, do you pay that receiver the contract, or do you move on and draft the next one? And it's something that we're starting to see. And you brought up when we were texting back and forth, like the holdouts with T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, this has been in the news for a while. The T. Higgins wants out, Brandon Ayuk wants another contract. Do you see a world where it's going to be the team that pays the wide receiver is not the team that drafted him when he's a star wide receiver? Or is this something that teams with, ballooning cap space every year, they're just going to have to figure it out like they figure out their quarterback situation?
I think it's going to be team by team dependent, right? Because with all this passing going on in the league nowadays, like, multiple wide receivers are good for many, many teams, right? So it's going to be hard to pay both guys. And you see that with the Brandon Ayuk, like, he's stuck on a team with George Kittle making so much money, with Deebo Samuel already on a big contract, with CMC making a ton of money on his running back contract. So you're seeing all these guys being heavily involved. And then with T. Higgins, he has to deal with Jamar Chase, right? And it's like, when you're a wide receiver playing on a team that's really good, it's going to be hard for you to get paid. And also, like, both Ayuk and Higgins, like, they don't get targeted enough to, like, say you should get $30 million a year. It makes sense for the team that they currently are on to pay them that, right? It would make sense for another team that's like, Ayuk would be my star, right? He's getting 150 targets. He's our focal point in our offense. He would be the star on our team. It makes sense to trade for him, pay him his $30 million he wants. Same thing with T. Higgins. Maybe he can be a bigger star, get more targets on a different team that he's not going to get for the Bengals. So there's some situations it just makes sense to trade away the guy because it doesn't make sense for you who drafted him to pay him, but it would make sense for another team. But when we talked about CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, like, no, those guys are your focal points. You need to pay them.
Yeah, and it's fascinating also because, T. Higgins was a second-round pick. He didn't get nearly the money that, a top 10 pick got. Justin Jefferson made, I think, $13 million in his first 4 years. He's going to make upwards of 20 this year. But that's a backup quarterback, full contract for the first 4 years, which makes it even more pressure-filled to he's like, you see what just happened? You're paying me now. So it's like, and both of those guys, as you mentioned, like Ayuk and T. Higgins are fascinating case studies because they were never the number one option on their teams, ever. It's always been the run game. It's been CMC. George Kittle was there. Brandon Ayuk has shown, as you mentioned, like he's shown flashes of being a wide receiver one. He's the de facto wide receiver one. Deebo Samuel is that, hybrid kind of guy. And Jamar Chase has always been there. And Tyler Boyd's eaten up a bunch of targets that would have gone to T. Higgins if he wasn't there. Like, do you see either of these players staying with their respective teams, or you think they're both on the move?
I think both will be here, be with their teams in 2024. I do think T. Higgins is not going to get the contract he wants. So maybe he signs a short contract with the Bengals or just plays out his contract and leaves next year. I do think the 49ers are going to pay him. I think they need to be more pass heavy next year. They passed the fewest times in the league last year. They drafted a first round wide receiver, and it might seem like, they're going to move on from Ayuk. I think they're trying to move on from Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I think right.
And then you have Pearson Ayuk. So I can't see Deebo here for the long haul. I say here, I'm a 49ers fan. Sorry.
Oh.
I can't see Deebo with the team much longer, maybe even gets traded this offseason, but one more year max. I think Ayuk gets his contract extension, but if they do pay him, he can't be getting 105 targets like he did last year. Like, he has to be more of he cannot disappear in games. He should be your main focus every game, get him the ball. Like, you cannot be paying a guy $30 million to get him 100 targets. He needs at least 130, 140.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that 30 gap is going to Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is a target absolute monster over there. It's interesting. Like, Brandon Ayuk has the makings of a wide receiver one in the sense that he's an elite route runner. Okay, he catches everything. He doesn't have to be on the outside. He can play in the slot. You can move him all over, and he is. We've seen over the last decade or so, possession receivers being their elite wide receivers. Usually it's a Michael Crabtree or a wide receiver one. Like, Michael Crabtree towards the end of his career was a great possession receiver, a third down receiver. Now you have these guys who are both. And Brandon Ayuk, definitely fits that mold. It's just going to be fascinating across the landscape of the NFL. Like, you're drafting all these guys so high. The bust rate's got to be, what it's always been, right? Like, the college game doesn't always translate. It just doesn't. And there's so many wide receivers and so many quarterbacks taken. That's why I asked the question initially, like, these positions are more similar than they've been because of how many are taken so high now with both positions. Right?
There's so many wide receivers that went off the board in the first 3 rounds this year. Maybe that messes with. I do think the teams are starting to get. Well, it was a really good draft class, but I do think teams are starting to get worried about. How much these wide receivers are getting paid. They need other options. They need depth in case they do lose out on these guys. Again, going back to the Cowboys, that's why it makes no sense. They have CeeDee Lamb and nothing else, so you kind of put yourself into the situation where you have to pay him. Like, they even did that with the running back, right? It was like, well, Zeke, now we're going to have to pay you whatever you want to come back because we didn't do anything in the draft. So this is just the Cowboys, man. They're driving me crazy. I don't even know where I just lost my train of thought because I'm just so annoyed by the Cowboys.
That's part of what we do here. Tyler and I just kind of do our thing. Tyler will be back next week. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. You can, Michelle, like, we've got a minute. Do you want to tell people everywhere that they can find you?
You can find some of my work over at NFL.com. I write some articles throughout the offseason. Then I write a weekly fantasy column over at NFL.com once the season starts. And then also you can find me every single day on Locked On Fantasy Football, Monday through Friday with Vinny Iyer. I also do a 49ers podcast on Fridays at the Gold Standard. That's always a fun one. Always have a mimosa in hand for that one. That's a good time. And then you get anything I do, I pretty much post on Twitter. So you can find me at BallBlast and BallBlastEM. Love
it. I wish we could talk. I was going to do a fantasy segment today, but I'm like, we'd be here for 2.5 hours. So I felt like that was unnecessary at this given juncture. For Michelle, I'm Alex. We are Locked On NFL Thursday. Stay locked for tomorrow. It's going to be a great show as well. Talk to you then.
Bye, y'all.